Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. With me in studio, I don't want to wait. I'm so excited. It's Desi Anderson, and she is running in the Illinois Senate District 46. So she is going to be on my ballot. She's going to be my senator, hopefully, because Dave Kaler is a train wreck, a mess. He is pitching himself as a moderate. First things first, you had mentioned some polling, Desi, and I wanted to talk about that polling. Are there some polls out right now, and where do the polls have you?
Yeah, we've got some internal polling, and then, of course, we're using some other polling out of Springfield, and it's showing some of these races are tighter than what the media is sharing with folks. And I really think that reflects the attitude that people have currently. I think people want real solutions. They don't like the direction that we're heading. And they're seeing it in their pocketbooks daily. So that's what's keeping us motivated to finish out strong. We've got about 30 days left. Before you know it, November 8th will be here. And this is our time to step up and be a voice for families.
Now, I know that Dave Kaler, I'm sure he is doing some internal polling as well, and that he's taking a look at the polls and seeing that these races are getting tighter and tighter. Is he worried? Is that why he's changing up his messaging now? Is it because of the polls? Is it because, he's actually finally out there talking to people and people are telling him about you, maybe? I don't shy away. I don't know about our listeners here on Cities 92.9, but whenever a candidate comes up to me and I know who their opposition is and I agree with their opposition, I look at them and I say, well, for example, Desi Anderson cares about crime. Why'd you vote for the Safety Act, Dave Kaler? I do that as a constituent, and I would if Dave Kaler were to knock on my door one day. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think it is that is making Dave Kaler so pivoting? He is pivoting everything. Maybe he's always been this way. I don't know him. I personally don't know him. I don't know anything about him. I just know what his voting record is, and I know what he goes on the record and says.
Yeah, so I think we're counting the new district. So the old district that Senator Kaler currently represents still is Fulton County, Tazewell, and Peoria. The new district is now parts of McLean, parts of Woodford, parts of Tazewell, and parts of Peoria. So it now goes out east. And so we're trying to take advantage of that where his name ID is not there. But what we do have, like you said, is his voting record and what he represents. And, for Nick and I, my husband, our small business is right here in the heart of McLean County. We're engaged in our communities. We want what's best in our communities. And so there's work to do. And so we've been working from the very beginning since I announced, and we've made it known that we want to get in front of voters. We're door knocking. I want to meet them at the door and hear what is happening in their lives.
Mm-hmm. And that's why he's probably pivoting, is because of the district and the way it's been drawn. It's not his regular base.
That's right. And so my questions to individuals in Peoria, too, that have had him represent their voices for a long time. I've said, when was the last time Senator Kaler knocked on your door and asked what are you all facing as a family? What's impacting you guys? And so we've taken the time to do that. And I think it's so important for the voter to meet with their legislator, to see that they're actively engaged and want to know, for example, what are my decisions in Springfield? How are they impacting the Smith family down the street, or vice versa? And I think at the end of the day, people just want to be heard. They want to know they've got a voice, and is their voice being represented in Springfield?
Yeah, and like you said, Dave Kaler has been around since, 1982?
1982 is the first time he got into politics in Peoria. So,
do you know how old he is?
He actually will be 74 in December. 74 years old. I'll tell you, Kat, personally, at age 74, I hope I'm retired and enjoying grandkids. Lord willing, I have got grandkids. And
how do you think he stays in it? That's one thing that I've never really understood about people who stay in politics for so long. I mean, clearly this guy is he is in it for the long haul. Why?
So I think there's a motivation there for him, right? Retirement. You know, he's in leadership. People forget that he's the assistant to the majority in Springfield. So he's got an influence there. And what does retirement look like if you've been there for 20 years? Right? And those are the questions people are asking. And those are tax dollars, right? If he retires after 20 years, my guess is he's going to walk away with some big bucks. And so at 74, I'm not sure. After 40 years, I mean, I think we need term limits, and I've been a huge advocate for that. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, honestly. We've got to have them, because what happens is corruption builds over time.
Yes.
And those seeds are planted over time. And we've got to get a fresh voice in there.
I don't know if Dave Kaler really represents Bloomington Normal. I mean, if you've been in politics for that long and you're not a business owner, I feel like when I think of the Bloomington Normal Peoria listener, and we're going to get to this here, the 15th deadliest city is the city of Peoria. Wow, oh, wow. We're going to get that to here in just a second. But I want to ask this. Now, I don't think that somebody in Bloomington Normal Peoria is he doesn't represent them. He's a 74-year-old dude with like a career in politics. Nobody has ever said, you know what, yeah, that guy. But why do they keep doing it? Is it just because it's a familiar name? And is that what does that say about the voter? Is the voter stupid for voting Dave Kaler in?
No, voters are very smart. The challenge has been is there hasn't been really much challengers in that area. And so the last election cycle, you had a great candidate, Mary Burris, that was running against him. Another close race. Now this election cycle, he's facing another challenger, myself. So what people are finally saying is, hey, you know what? You said you were going to do this. And now we're looking back over the years of your voting record, and it's not what you're saying you're doing. And so we're fed up. And voters are fed up. And you're right. Bloomington Normal and Peoria, there's a lot of similarities. In this new district, you've got so many colleges that are represented. Heartland, ISU, ICC, Bradley University, OSF Nursing School. At 74 years old, I don't know how you represent those. That's right. And so I actually went out to ISU and Bradley University and met students last month, and they couldn't believe it. They're like, wow, we don't typically see this. Someone out here just meeting students, introducing themselves, wanting to know, asking what students are facing. And I think it's important when you've got that much representation of young adults. They want to know they've got a voice too. They want to know they're going to be represented. And I look forward to representing our college students. And I know what they're facing, you know, better than what a 74-year-old white man.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to get into your background here. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how Peoria is the 15th deadliest city. We're going to unpack this CBS article. Then I also want to talk about Desi's background and where she came from, why she's running, because it is truly inspiring. Then what I'm going to do is play a little clip from somebody of the Libertarian Party who left and actually decided to run but he left the Libertarian Party and became a regional coordinator. And what I've noticed here in this community is that libertarians really love Desi Anderson. I don't know why. I think it's just a lot of people really love you. And I think that that's somewhere where you could capitalize. And I just want to unpack your thoughts thoughts about the Libertarian Party. I think they really like you in that area, and I don't know why. It's incredible, but I just want to ask about that, the Libertarian Party. So we'll play a clip together and we'll react to it together. This is Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Hey, folks, before we took the break, we were talking with Desi Anderson. We are going to get to this 15 deadliest. They ranked Peoria as the 15th deadliest city in the nation.
Yep, per capita. So I think that's a huge concern on a lot of people. And Bloomington Normal folks are asking the question,
are we next?
Are we next? And they have the right to ask that, right? They've seen what the legislators have done over there. They haven't made crime a priority. And that's a real concern they have. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, no, I know. And one thing that I saw yesterday, actually, and the Beau and I, we were walking around in Uptown Normal, and there was some sort of, he was clearly high on something in Uptown Normal, and had his shirt off, practically his pants were down, doing something very, very bizarre. But there was a police officer there, and the Beau, he looks at me and he comments and he says, the Safety Act hasn't been implemented yet, so they should be arresting this guy. But it's so real when you see things like that, when things make you uneasy out in the community, and you're like, somebody's going to call the police. Somebody will call the police. Well, it turns out when you call the police and they show up, they're just going to get right back into their squad car and leave, because there's nothing they can do with somebody like that. You can't make arrests just because somebody's high and causing a public disturbance anymore. You used to be able to arrest that. With the Safety Act, no more. We will get to that, but before we get to the crime that is taking over in Peoria, wanted to play this. It's Paul Durr, and he used to be a member of the Libertarian Party. I met him out at the pre-debate rally that had happened earlier this week. And Paul Durr had a lot to say about how, this is so much bigger than party lines. And I think that you resonate shocking, and not shockingly, because you're just that amazing, with a libertarian candidate and with college students who typically hold more ideological values that are left-leaning. And it's shocking that a Republican can cross party lines and grab and have people who don't think like you do, clearly, still want to vote for you. This is Paul Durr. He doesn't mention you by name, but he talks about this divide and the party lines, and how the movement of getting good people into offices like Darren Bailey into the gubernatorial office, how that's above all. That's above all. So here's Paul Durr. Hold on. Hey, Kat Peterson, Cities 92.9. I'm out here in Uptown Circle. I mean, there was like 75 people here, and then it looks like there was a subgroup that kind of marched up to the Hyatt Hotel with Darren. And with me, can you give us your name and a little bit of your background?
Yep, my name is Paul Durr. I'm a Libertarian. I used to be a member of the Libertarian Party of the state of Illinois, but I stepped down my position to help Darren run the campaign so that the best man can run this state, and try to bring us back to a little set of standards, constitutional values that we have grown too far away from in the last 250 years, and it's time to change it around and bring it back now. Okay,
now the Libertarian Party, a lot of people, what they'll tell me, they'll say, if you vote for Libertarians, you're wasting your vote. And that's what a lot of people are telling me. They're like, you'll waste your vote, you'll waste it, and you need to vote Darren in. There's a lot of people who just want to vote Libertarian to try to get them that 5% threshold, and I'm totally for that. I want ballot access for them too, right? But what would you say to somebody who's on the fence right now and might vote Libertarian for the gubernatorial race?
Well, I would tell them that you're not necessarily wasting your vote if you're doing it for pride and principles, but the matter of fact is that we have a state that's really contested as far as the Democrat stronghold, and if we don't do our part right now to at least change it and put a balance back into the system, I know we all hate the duopoly, the two-party system, but at least there's a balance that has to happen, and if we don't have it, we are completely lost to one side, and the only thing worse than two parties is a one-party rule, which is a dictatorship.
Wonderful. Now, what was it like stepping down from your role? Who replaced you?
That would have been John King out of the east side of the state of Illinois. He was the new field operations manager for the Libertarian Party.
Now, is it too far of a stretch to say that the state of Illinois is in a place that is bigger than party lines and it's just important to vote Darren in?
It's not so much as that it's bigger than party lines. It's about the people, and I guess in a way it is against party lines, but the party lines that have a stronghold and actual control over both the media and the corporations and the lobbyists and everything that happens in this particular state need to have at least some sort of opposition. If it ain't the people's voice, it has to be at least the other side of the aisle that has some kind of resistance and says no instead of yes all the time to the inappropriate spending and the influx of the pension debts, as long as well is the imbalanced budget that is presumably defined as a balanced budget over and over again.
Yeah, I love that. You take away the COVID federal funding, and then what's left? A bunch of red lines.
Exactly.
Now, I wanted to ask, what do you exactly do for the Darren Bailey campaign? Are you, in campaign finance, or?
I am the regional coordinator, basically, which means I'm an unpaid volunteer that actually hosts 13 counties, directors of each county. I make sure that their stock's supplied. I'm the surrogate speaker for him at events that he cannot attend, and I'm also any part of the sales group or any motivation. In other words, if Darren has somehow been at any event in the southwest part of the state of Illinois, I was somehow in a hand in it.
Now, are you attending the debate tonight, and what do you anticipate will be the most talked about issue?
Well, besides manipulation and propaganda, I would have to say the abortion and the crime issue, as well as the funding for education and everything like that. Those are your three hot topics in the state. Those are our most important topics of the state. Although they won't be in detail as far as what we need to hear and the way we need to explain it, but there will be at least talk of the subject, I hope, and at least a side brought out that can't be manipulated or corrupted into a media set standard where listening live, the people can actually hear themselves from the man's voice of what's going to happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Where'd you get that?
So what you heard there was Paul Durr, and I had an interview with him out in Uptown Circle, and in studio with me on Conservative Cat is Desi Anderson. She is running in the Illinois Senate District 46. So I thought it was interesting. Everybody that I talk to, usually, even college students who do not think like me, do not think like a conservative constitutionalist or anything like that, they like Desi Anderson. I don't know what it is, which is awesome. I think we're getting to a point where we go across party lines and we vote for the candidate who is going to represent us and who we feel looks like us in office. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. This guy leaving the Libertarian Party to work on Darren Bailey's campaign, he didn't mention you by name, but do you think that you've got that appeal?
I think so. I think people just want real solutions. They're tired of the political rhetoric. They want to know that someone's going to roll up their sleeves and represent them and make themselves accessible. And that's what Paul was saying. He wants to know if he's going to vote a certain way that his voice is going to be represented. And I think that's right. And so that's what I hope to do. And that's why I've continue to work so hard across the 46th district to get in front of voters so they have the ability to come up, ask questions, and see where I stand on the issues. And I welcome that. And we've got to remember the Democrats control Springfield. In order to do work, we've got to be willing to work across the aisle and meet one another. So let's find the stuff that we do see eye to eye, that we can find real solutions for our communities, for our families, and that's got to be our platform. Mm-hmm. And I don't see why we can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible, and that's what I keep telling to the students on the campus. I said, why are we not a tech hub here? You've got great universities. Where's our tech hub? Peoria's got Caterpillar. Great software companies are in Peoria. Hidden gems that people don't know about. Why is Peoria not a tech hub?
Yeah.
And what's happening is folks are leaving our great state once they invest in higher ed here. They're leaving their talents and going elsewhere. Cost of living high crime, you name it, other states that stayed open during the pandemic, that are seeing growth in their local economies. That's where people are moving and setting roots. And we've got to turn things around. We've got to be job creators and invest in our young people, because they are our next generation.
Yeah, they are our next generation. And like you said, I mean, I shockingly stayed here in Bloomington after graduating ISU. Did a bunch of personal things. I really wanted to stay for, the family and everything like that. But I was seriously considering moving because I don't like the state of Illinois. I don't like the politics. I don't like how divisive it is. I feel like it's a very divisive climate. And this is part of the reason why I got into radio, is because I want to kind of balance the tides. And I don't think you're going to do that with a one-party dictatorship, and that's the Democrat stronghold. That's the guy, Dave Kaler, who's been there since 1982 and is now 74 years old and has no idea what me, Katrina Peterson, age 23, is thinking, feeling, and wanting. He's got no clue. And that brings me to this. One of the issues you bring up that would unite us instead of divide us is this issue of safety. So in America, an estimated 16,000 people were murdered in 2019. This was a 0.3% increase from the 2018 estimate. Now, here are the murder rates of 65 major cities. We're not going to go through all of them, but the cities with greater than 100,000 residents. So these are cities, big cities, kind of. Well, to me, big cities, right? Greater than 100,000. And they've calculated using the latest FBI statistics, 2019 crime statistics in the United States. In this data, they come up with Peoria actually being number 15 as the deadliest city. So I was shocked to not see Chicago on here, but this is, why is it Chicago's not on there and Peoria is? Can you run through that with me?
Yeah, so they're looking at per capita, right? And so Chicago's bigger. You've got so many boroughs within that. So really, it's shocking to hear 15th deadliest out of 65 nationwide per capita in Peoria. And the irony is, Kat, Senator Kaler acknowledges the high crime.
Yeah, but
see, he acknowledges it, seeing the trend has gone up, and there's no solutions being provided. And one of the solutions I can provide is, let's repeal the Safety Act. Let's provide appropriate funding for the communities. Mental health, we need to continue to provide that service. You've got single moms on the south side of Peoria that were telling me this summer they wish their kids were in school because it's safer. They would not allow their kids to ride their bikes down the street because of the gunshots going back in the background, right, being fired off. So that's the reality. And they're saying, yeah, Senator Kaler's not on my front porch asking me what I'm facing. And she had me go into her living room. And sure enough, the kids are just sitting on the couch and they've just been watching TV all day. Because mom feels like the kids were safer in the living room watching TV instead of playing outside.
That's scary. I mean, I got chills. The murder rate in Peoria is 22.53 per 100,000. So 22.53. So 22 people per 100,000. I mean, gosh, and I know their numbers, and it's hard for us to wrap our head around numbers, but those real life stories about the kids sitting there watching TV, they don't want to go outside. They don't want their kids to go outside. I mean, and Bloomington Normal is in your district, and I am faced with it all the time. I look over my shoulder. I have that feeling, and sometimes I think it's because, I watch the news. I know the numbers, and I'm scared because I know the stats, and not a lot of people are, in tune with the stats as closely as, I am, because I'm doing it every day. But you live it, too. So there was, and I was down volunteering at a homeless shelter. The Safe Harbor or Salvation Army. great folks over there. I'm not trying to discredit anybody who, goes to the homeless shelter. And this guy, I don't even know if he was one of the guys I had served at that. We were serving some food or something. Approaches me. I'm in my truck. I've got the window up. He approaches me. He comes over from across the street. There's a little posse of people. He comes over, knocks on my window, asks me to roll down my window. I don't know this guy. Very, very dark outside, very late, probably about 9 p.m. at night. And I felt awful because I'm not the type of person to dismiss somebody. I would love to stop and chat with anybody. And if they want to talk to me, I'm going to stop and chat with them. But wanted me to roll down my window. And I was afraid. And I don't want to feel, he was probably a harmless guy. I don't know. But I didn't roll down my window. I backed up and I drove off. And I just kind of smiled and waved at him and drove off. But I was scared to roll down my window. And I've never gotten that feeling before. I'm usually a pretty trusting person. If somebody approaches me, a stranger, I usually just smile and I start talking to them. I get pretty used to it, right? And listeners who listen to me and they recognize and they'll come up and start talking to me. And usually I'm pretty trusting. I was not. And that makes me feel bad as a person. I want to be a trusting person. I want to feel safe, but I was not safe. I don't know if I was safe in that moment. And having that question burning in your head, am I safe? Am I safe right now? Can I talk to this person? Is that person going to hurt me? Does that person want to see me dead? That is a scary world to live in.
It is. And so what I talk about San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Those were the same questions folks were having in San Francisco. Large Democratic city. They did a special election and recalled their Democratic DA.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
And so you're seeing it in LA. You're seeing it in San Francisco. San Francisco, the city handed those constituents a victory by letting go of this DA. Because crime is on everyone's mind. How do we safeguard my child walking to school? If an adult is having those same questions, am I safe? How do you tell a 10-year-old, 11-year-old that is walking the streets, that's seeing the same thing that you're seeing? How do you reassure them, you know what, Johnny, it's going to be okay. You're going to make it to school.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't have to live
in fear.
And
we have to live in fear. We do have to take a quick break, but I want to talk about that DA because I think that was a George Soros-backed DA. I'm pretty sure that they uprooted. I don't know. And I'll look up the story. But what had happened was that they all worked together to try to remove this DA, and they could do it in that state. Actually, in the state of Illinois, there are so many hoops you can't even remove your DA. As it is, if we wanted to get rid of Don Knapp, which I'm not saying we should get rid of Don Knapp, I love Don Knapp, but if we wanted to get rid of him, we wouldn't be able to do it because the state statute says we can't as the people, which is totally mind-boggling. We'll be back. Conservative Cat. Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. It's a Saturday from 5 to 7. Desi Anderson, she joins me in studio. And we were talking about the crime rate. We were talking about how we are living in fear and how this San Francisco DA was uprooted. So actually in the Illinois state statutes, it says that we can't really remove a DA. You as a state senator, do you think you have any kind of power to give that power back to the people to try to remove a DA if we wanted to?
You know what? I think the voices of our citizens should always be our priority. And, if folks want to have the ability to recall elected officials, I think that should be an option and should be available and accessible for folks where, that's where transparency and accountability shows up. That's why we have these processes in place where you saw in San Francisco, they said enough is enough. We want to get our petitions together and recall this individual. And they were successful. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't led by the Republicans. It was led by Democrats that said no more. And so yeah, I'm all for about citizens gathering together and unifying their voice to have them feel like they're being heard.
Yeah, and to bring it up to a recall vote. So real quick, I'm going to talk about this Wire Points article. So it's by the great Matt Rosenberg. Love that guy. Time and again, local elected officials, state lawmakers, and even the Chicago Police Union and some suburban police chiefs have expressed deep frustration with what they see as soft on crime policies of the Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Foxx. The idea of a recall has been discussed, but in the state of Illinois, there's no statewide process which gives proponents a legal pathway to recall vote of a public official whom they believe is failing to serve the greater good. Compare that to California, where San Francisco, the DA, got the boot back in June recall vote. So Illinois needs to grant local voters the same sort of clear recall election powers their counterparts in other states enjoy. I mean, that's only fair. It's the fundamental tool in the arsenal of accountability in a state which badly needs it. We need accountability in 30 states. And JB, you said that you had 3 ethics bills. Here's something for you to do to improve the ethics of this state. Then you can get your constituents some recall, get us the ability to recall a vote. So in 30 states, there's an official state mandated process by which voters can decide whether to recall local elected officials. In another 20 states, including Illinois, there is no such statewide process, such as a constitutional amendment, which was proposed in Illinois several years ago, but gained no traction with lawmakers. So several years ago, we had asked for the ability to recall some of our local elected officials. They shot that down several years ago. The only way a local recall vote can occur in Illinois, get this, is if a local governing body, such as the city council, a school board, or a county board, has itself already approved a local recall election process, which is hard in and of itself. So we can't even petition. We can't even do what they did in San Francisco, which is why I had asked you, would you be for that? And you are. JB seems to struggle with the whole ethics question. This seems like a pretty clear solution.
I think it is a clear solution, but here's why elections now in Illinois are that much more important. This is why the emphasis is do your homework, choose the best candidate that you believe is going to do the right thing for you and your family. Because Illinois is one of those states that make it difficult for us to challenge those elected officials. And they know that.
Yeah. Which
right?
is why Dave Kaler has been in since 1982.
He's been in Peoria politics
since
1982.
Yeah.
That's longer than you've been alive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by quite a few years. I was born
That's
in
right.
1999.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I don't even know how people look at Dave Kaler and say, yes, that's my guy. No offense, Dave Kaler. Well, all of the offense, honestly, because you voted yes for the Safety Act. I don't take too kindly to people voting actively against me and my safety. I really don't take too kindly to that. And I also really hate that you had voted yes for the Comprehensive Sex Act. Which brings me to that question. I wanted to ask you about his voting record and the Comprehensive Sex Act. You yourself, a mother, how extreme is it, this Comprehensive Sex Act?
Yeah, so as a mom, I want to be in charge to telling my son about his body, about his health, about his well-being. I don't want the government to get involved and have any say in that. And I was attending the school board meetings a year ago when Vana was 6 months old in my arms. He would fall asleep at 9:00 at night because they were still going on. and so the reality is parents want to have a choice and a voice when it comes to their kids' education. And I don't think any government will ever be that voice. I don't think they should be that voice. And that's why parental choice is so important. And they want a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And giving them 3 minutes to speak at a school board meeting is not a seat at the table.
No.
They're
no.
asking for transparency and accountability, and we need to deliver on that.
And I do think that Desi Anderson, what would that relationship look like between you and, say, the Bloomington city mayor, the mayor of Bloomington? I was really upset with the mayor of Bloomington when it came to this Bloomington Public Library and a display case that they had. I don't know if you remember that story, but it was a display case, and it was, I don't know, probably about 10 feet outside of the children's area where children go for their books, and it was clearly there on display some pornographic material. It was cartoon porn. It was like cartoon characters performing sex acts. And good thing this is a Saturday show. Plug your kids' ears. But it was cartoon characters performing sex acts. And they had it on display ready for kids to grab. And I was kind of upset that the mayor didn't do anything about this Bloomington Public Library's taxpayer funded. They're expanding it $28 million, I think it is. How involved will you be as a state senator in municipal government? Will you be working with the mayors here in Bloomington Normal?
Yeah, I would be very involved. And that's why, when you get elected into office, you're working with many different actors. And you've got to have the ability to talk in a way that's positive, but changes can be made because these are real concerns that folks are having. That mayor was also elected into office, right? So overall, people want to know there's going to be accountability and transparency.
It gets back to accountability. And look at that.
I keep saying that because it's true, Kat. People are frustrated. People want to change. And I tell you what, when it comes to your kids, parents are serious about that. And I think parents should have the ability to raise their child and whatever freedoms, whatever way they want to. I don't want to have the government come down and say, you must do this, this, and this. No, people will do what's best for them. People are smart, and I respect people's ability to think on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and get you a state senator who pulls out a candy bar and says, "Here you go, Kat." Hey, we have got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to get into Desi Anderson's background. She is a family woman, and that leads us into our next question. What is Desi's background? Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Desi Anderson, she joins me on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Always be a part of the show. You can text in 309-451-9299. Have you got questions for Desi? Text those in, and I will relay those on over to her. And you can always go to where to find out more about Desi?
www.desiforillinois.com, and there is a contact page, so feel free to fill that out. Send us whatever messages you guys have, and we'd love to respond and get back to you all.
Wonderful. Now, I wanted to get into your background because you are a family woman. That's where we kind of left off, giving the power back to the parents. Power to the parents. Yes, I love parents. Love my parents. They're fantastic human beings. Now, I wanted to ask you about your background. So where do you come from and your family life? What's that look like?
Yeah, so my story is very unique. I really call it the American dream. It captures the American spirit and what we're all about. When I was 10 days old, I was abandoned in the streets of Bulgaria. Lived in a segregated orphanage for almost 8 years of my life.
When you say segregated, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I represent the minority group out of Eastern Europe called the Roma. The Roma folks were banned to go to public school, for example, when I was a child. So when I say segregated in the orphanage, we were at one level. So if you were a person of color or special needs, you were on one floor. If you were Caucasian, you were on another floor. And the way you were cared for was extremely different depending what level you were on.
Wow.
And
this happened in Bulgaria.
This happened into Bulgaria. And this is what I tell people, every country struggles internally with their own issues. It's not just in America, it's everywhere. And so Bulgaria has struggled with their own indigenous group, their own minority groups. And I'll give you an example, Kat. When I was 5 years old, I remember looking outside my orphanage window and not being able to go to school. And other kids were. And just the impact that has had on my life and my love to learn and for education, but also my passion to make sure everyone's included. And that's why I'm an advocate of reaching across the aisle, working with our counterparts to make sure we are representing folks that have the values here. And so was blessed through adoption to come to the U.S. and was raised in your typical middle-class family. And when I got older, my parents basically said college isn't going to be an option for you. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the resources. And so I went straight into the workforce, and I ended up working with nonprofits and worked a little bit in Africa, Europe, and then my last stint of work was working in Guatemala for 5 years. Yo puedo hablar español. And worked with a variety of folks. Worked with MS-13 gang members that were trying to get out of that lifestyle and give them a skill set like vocational training. And what that does is it gives people dignity. It gives them a sense of who they are, what they can do, and they know they can provide for their family in ways that they don't have to be corrupt. And what that does to the soul is amazing. And I got burnt out, came back to the U.S. when I was 26 years old, not knowing what I was going to do with my life, and living in southern Indiana at the time, I decided I'm going to apply for school. And I went back to school as an adult and graduated at age 31 with a college degree.
Did you take out loans?
I did, and but I worked as well, right? And so the reality is America allows you to create your own path. You've got the freedoms and the ability to do whatever, create whatever you want for you and your family. I met my husband along the way. We've got a 16-month-old boy who is just Vano is just the light and the treasure, and really things. When you become a mom, your perspective it's no longer about you. Your perspective now is for your kids, and that is one of my main motivations of running. And it's no longer about me. I'm now investing in my son's generation. What is he going to be able to do? What is his community going to look like when he's in high school? As he's facing life, and so I want what's better for our kids.
And it gets back to that. I'm sure you don't want to have that tough conversation with Vano when he's a teenager. Like, hey, buddy, don't go outside after 5 o'clock because it's purge law out there. I couldn't imagine being a mother like that. I don't know, because clearly I don't have children. It's something that I so desperately would love to have in my life. I love kids. They are the reason why I too, I'm a community activist. I love working in my community because it's about them. And when I look at Vano, I'm like, okay, yes, babies. That's it. That's why we have to do what we're doing. It's because them. It's not. And I know I'm young and I have a future. I don't want to be a mom that has to look at my kid and say, try not to go outside today. I don't want you bouncing the basketball past 5 o'clock today. It gets kind of scary out there at night, okay? Come inside at 5. I don't want to do that. I feel like now you have to. We saw all the time shells over at BHS, police officers finding shells, gunshot shells, and it's just like, wow. There was a shooting over by BHS, I think not too long ago, about a month ago. And it's just stories like that happen that I want to try to avoid. And when you're invested in the news or hearing things in your community, and it's not even the news anymore, it's just your neighbor saying, yeah, this happened to me this week. It's like, wow, that's something you hear on the nightly news.
Yeah. Well, so Nick, my husband, he is from the Bloomington Normal area, which is part of the new district. Him and his brother used to have a paper route.
Oh.
That was back in the day where my husband said, you know what, I was safe. I could ride my bicycle early in the morning with my brother and throw the paper on people's front porch. And he would get up early at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. That's what they would do. My husband's worked since he was, junior high, he would say, working the concession stands. But can you imagine trying to send your child right now in these parts where you've got Peoria, 15th deadliest city per capita? Can you imagine sending your 12-year-old boy on his bike doing the paper route? No, that no longer happens. And those are the things we miss. That's what makes our communities more livelier, where we are able to engage, where we know, hey, we can walk down the streets a couple of miles and feel safe. We need to bring that back.
Yeah, and I don't like the feeling of, not wanting to engage with my fellow community members. I mean, because I feel like everybody is out to get me. I feel afraid. And that's something that shouldn't be in Bloomington Normal of all places, because the people here are fantastic and there's good people. And every conversation you miss because you're afraid is an experience you'll never get back. So I do have to cut to another break, but Desi Anderson, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And tell us where we can find out more about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today. Please check out DesiForIllinois.com. There's a great video out there that tells more of my story, and would love to have your support. In order for the red wave to happen, folks, we make it happen. You talk with your neighbors. You tell your friends to turn out the vote. And it is possible, folks, to get good candidates into Springfield. So let's make it happen. Thanks for the support. And thanks for having me on, Kat.
Call 10 people on Election Day and get them out to the polls. Hey, this is Conservative Kat. Come back after break.